Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to everybody, and particularly those who may be watching from the comfort of their homes. So warning to any of the residents and others here present, if you don't want anyone to know you're here, please make sure you stay out of camera range. We're not expecting a fire alarm tonight, so if there is one, follow the officers and we'll get you out of here safely. I would ask you, if you have mobile phones or tablets, to at least turn them to silent. On my right is David Knowles, Head of Transport and Town Centre Projects, and on my left are James Jones and Steve Clark, both of them from Democratic Services, who will maintain order and record the events and decisions that are made. Lastly, I need to ask if there are any matters of interest that need to be declared. I can hold my hand up and say I don't have, and it would only relate to you, Councillor, and you have shaken your head. I'll take that as I'll have to say that so they can be suitably recorded. So there we go. So the first item on the agenda tonight is the petition in relation to Warwick Road, West Drayton. I'm pleased to say I know Warwick Road for reasons I'm sure you can imagine, and I am familiar with the road and how it all works. I will start by inviting the petitioner to say a few words. You have up to 5 minutes. Don't feel obliged to fill them, but you have up to 5 minutes if you so wish. Off you go, sir.
Thank you very much to the committee for allowing me to present our petition for Warwick Road. With the coming of the Elizabeth line, Warwick Road has become increasingly congested. The main reason for that is because it's got the back access to the train station. So people use Warwick Road as a drop-off point and a pick-up point for commuters. In the morning and in the evenings, the road is highly congested. We've got cars coming from all directions, and because we've got cars parked on either side, cars cannot pass safely. We've got speed bumps, but they are spread out pretty widely, and as soon as the cars pass over the speed bumps, they do tend to accelerate to the extent that when my son was coming out of the driveway, he was hit by the car. And it doesn't matter what speed the other car was doing, legally he's at fault because he was coming out of the driveway. Because of all these events, and also a lot of families moving out of Warwick Road, we would like to see an extension of the parking permits to the weekends, as well as imposing a 20 mph limit on that road, and possibly what would be ideal is having a no entry sign at the edge of Branwell Road. So that will at least allow us to come out of our driveways only looking on one direction where the main traffic will be from. So that is my petition, and I'm open to any questions that you'd have.
Thank you. First of all, is anyone else here? I'm assuming you are. Do you want to speak now, Councillor, or wait?
Yeah.
I'm afraid you will. I'm afraid. Just stay there, because I'm going to ask you a couple of questions in a minute, and because we're live on air, you need to be at a microphone so that people, if there are people listening or watching, they can hear what you say. Councillor, crack on.
Thank you very much. Yes, Warwick Road is a road of concern. It's on many levels. It's not just the parking issue and the need to extend the parking management scheme there, but it's become a magnet for the Elizabeth line, because the rear of the station is Warwick Road, And so there's been various disputes and unfortunate incidents in that area. I know that the previous leader of the council did promise a CCTV camera in that area, and there was negotiations going on between Councillor Mathers and Sir Ray, and it was going to be paid for out of Section 106 money. And I do think, because there was a recent stabbing in that area as well, and various incidents, that it's got various levels of concern, Warwick Road. Yes, the speed is one, and it's not just speed, it's the danger of the cars moving swiftly from one obstacle to another, and frustrations. There's the frustrations of residents not being able to park in the evening because the parking management scheme finishes at 5, and there's now this magnet, which the Elizabeth line is, and it's going to become more so when it's fully operational. You know, the fact is that West Drayton is going to be 23 minutes away on the Elizabeth line from Tottenham Court Road. And so there is not a car park nearby. Branville Road is the closest, but it's some distance away, and people don't like to do the 5-minute or 10-minute walk. And so if you put speed monitoring, it's probably not going to call up speeds above 30 miles an hour. It really won't. But it's the danger of the slowing down to manoeuvre around a car and then speeding up, which is really causing the problem. But certainly various issues really. Parking management scheme is another issue. This is not the petition for that. But the speed down to 20 miles an hour would be really useful in this road, because it is a road of concern. Thank you, Chair.
I thought I pressed it. Apologies. Sir, you suggested a no entry sign at Branville Road. I'm just trying to understand exactly what you meant by that and where you mean. So, I mean, obviously Branville Road goes up and forms a junction with Warwick Road. You're suggesting that cars from Warwick Road can't enter Branville Road, or you're suggesting something different?
So what I was suggesting is a no entry sign between number 51 and number 30 of Warwick Road. So you've got Branville Road coming at a junction, and we don't want anyone from Branville Road to be able to turn left into Warwick Road.
Which would then enable them to get to Station Road.
Yes.
So essentially you want a no left turn at the end of
Yes.
Branville Road.
Yes.
Okay. And people coming down Warwick Road from Station Road would still be able to turn right. You don't have a problem with that?
Yes, that'd be fine, but a no entry sign would mean that people can't even go right and then turn around and come down Warwick Road.
I mean, the only problem I can see with that is that if someone comes down Brandonville Road and gets to the end, they can't turn left, and right is a no entry road, so
right has got access where they'll be able to go in there and turn around and go back down Branville Road.
Well, except that once they've turned around in Warwick Road, they'll be able to go straight along.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right. Well, I hear what you say. I just wanted an explanation of how you'd arrived at that. I think the issue, and I'm happy to look at it. Sorry, Councillor, I wanted to ask you about the CCTV. I wasn't aware of it. I can look into it. It's not a problem. The purpose of the CCTV was where? To have it in Station Road looking down Warwick Road, or something different?
I think that Councillor Mathers had discussed this with Charlie Cairns about the location.
Yeah, he may well have done that.
And there was a difficulty about various locations, because some of the better locations would have been Transport for London, or so is it? Yes, Transport for London property. So there needs to be looked at exactly about the location of that.
But the aim was to have a camera looking,
yes,
that was at least at the end of Station Road.
Yes.
But the purpose of that's not going to stop speeding cars, is it? Because 50 yards down, or not even 50 yards down Warwick Road, there's a bend.
Yeah, I agree, but I think as I said before, this is the issue with Warwick Road is on various levels.
Yes.
One is the antisocial behaviour, the issue of the
Yeah,
magnet
I mean,
on the back. But
there is relevance
I
there.
thought I would
Yeah,
bring
no,
that up.
I'm happy to hear it. It's sort of outside the remit of this this matter here. I think the current parking management scheme runs to what hours?
It's 9 to 5, Monday to Friday.
Right.
Yeah, and it has been discussed sort of in the past, possibility of changing it, but to be fair, that wasn't really part of the original petition. So I mean, but it's an issue that can be taken away and looked at if that's something that you'd like to. But it wasn't germane to the petition itself.
No. Okay, and what you'd like to see is on Saturday and Sunday too. And so the hours aren't an issue as such, because clearly if you're going up to town, unless you're going at 6 o'clock in the evening for a night out, then the existing 9 to 5 will catch you. It's really the extra days, Saturday and Sunday. Well, that's something we can certainly look at. I don't see that being an issue. It just needs the signs to be repainted, so I don't think that's a particular issue. What it might do, of course, and we'll need to look at a wider view on this, is it might then put pressure on other roads. And what I'm always very conscious of is that you do something here and it solves a problem and it creates another problem somewhere else. And so my concern would be that if we do it in Warwick Road, we may also have to do it in other roads as well, because otherwise, Branville Road being a good case in point, suddenly you'll find people who don't have a problem in Branville Road have got a problem. So we might have to widen that, but it's something we can look at. And I dare say we might have to. I dare say this is probably an issue that's happening across the road in I can never think, something Mill Road. What's it called? Colin Mill Road. That's it. Or the next one up. So
Ferrers Avenue. Yeah.
Yeah, Ferrers Avenue. Exactly. So that might be an issue we'd have to look at.
I do think that with the Elizabeth, I do think with the Elizabeth line sort of coming on stream through Paddington to the other side, where we've got the 23 minutes from West Drayton to Tottenham Court Road, that is going to definitely cause a lot more people wanting to use the Elizabeth line. And so I think maybe the council needs to look at this generally, because there is no big parking areas apart from Branville Road car park near to the Elizabeth line at this location.
Councillor, I think you're right. I mean, we can't, well, as you appreciate, we can't magic up another car park, much as we might like to, but it's certainly something we might have to think about in terms of widening the net, and we can look at that as part of this, as to whether we make everywhere Monday to 7 days a week as opposed to 5, and that would certainly help. I'm glad to hear you've already got road humps, because I'm not a fan of road humps, so I wouldn't be advocating the installation thereof. So you're lucky you've got them already. But and I have to tell you, I'm not a particular fan of 20-mile-an-hour zones. Whether we should undertake a survey or not, I don't know. It did occur to me maybe instead of a survey, we might just install one of these flashing speed sign cameras and see if that had any effect. I'll ask officers to consider the no left turn type situation. I suspect that might run into problems for the reasons we outlined, but it's certainly something we can look at, and we'll come back to you if you're happy with that. But I don't see any reason why we can't do something about the PMS. It seems pretty straightforward, but I think we'll have to look at the wider parking management scheme around that area, because clearly if we make Warwick Road 7 days a week, then it's bound to knock on into other roads, and we may have to consult a bit on that, mightn't we?
Just to confirm, absolutely, Councillor, I would suggest that what we would normally do when we're considering this sort of thing, we're looking at extending parking management schemes, times of operations, we would talk to the ward councillors and get a sense of where you feel that area comprises, because exactly as Councillor Bianco said, there's a sort of like an ink blot. These things sort of spread. How far, and your local knowledge would be very valuable on that.
And you'll be shocked to hear that I have no objection to that. Is there anything else usefully we can talk about?
I think just the general problem with the area. We've got new development now in Tavistock Road, which is opposite. There's just been an agreed appeal on that, so one development is going ahead. Another one is up for consideration by the council. So there is a real issue with parking. There's going to be an even greater issue in parking and between Useley and West Drayton. That is of concern to all of our residents.
I don't disagree with you. I wish you could convince your friend, the Mayor of London, that he should be more accepting of higher parking ratios in the new builds that take place. However, I hear what you say, and you're absolutely right, and this is an ongoing issue. I think if Mr. Knowles has a chat with you outside this place in terms of where we could take this forward a bit. I'm pleased to say that TfL has now resumed some funding to us, and these PMS schemes come from, the finance for the PMS schemes comes from TfL. So at least, although in this case it would be de minimis, because literally all we'd need to do is change the signs. So I think it should be easily look-atable, so to speak. On the matter of the CCTV issue, I'll it's nothing to do with this, as you appreciate. I will ask the question elsewhere and get you an answer as to
and
what's
it's certainly
happened.
something supported by the local police.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Sorry, just for the purposes of the minutes, Councillor. So, just we've obviously listened to the petitioners. That's good. Number one. Number two, you're mindful that you don't think that anything is to be benefited from doing a.
I don't think so at this point.
No, okay.
But in lieu of recommendation 2, I'd like you to investigate the
parking management scheme,
PMS scheme, to extending it.
Yes.
And also to look at the suggestion around the no left turn or something. I don't see it as workable, but you're the professional, so I.
And then also just to note that you made a very helpful suggestion about perhaps a vehicle activated sign as possibly something we can also look at and explore with you subsequently.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that covers those items.
You happy with that?
Yep.
Thank you.
Very much.
I shortened the time down, you'll be pleased to know, from 20-minute gaps to 15-minute gaps, because last time I sat here, we had a few minutes after every petition to twiddle our thumbs before we could move on to the next one. I've now run over, so that's good news. So the next one is Howlett's Lane, Ruislip. We have a petitioner, I assume? Oh, no, you're not Mr. Sutherland. You're very welcome, Mrs. Sutherland. And I see there are 2 councillors present as well. Only 2 councillors present. Where's the 3rd councillor? That's what I'd like to know. When you're ready, please go ahead. You've got 5 minutes. You don't have to use it, but you've got 5 minutes.
My name is Lynn Sutherland, and I'm representing the residents of Howlett's Lane, Ruislip. Howlett's Lane is in the main a divided highway with a central reservation that includes many mature trees. Near the Breakspear Road end, there are some well-used shops and the Woodman pub. After the shop, the road bends, making it, for the most part, a blind bend. There is a regular speeding along the divided part of the road. Everyone seems to think because it's divided, it's somehow a 40-mile-an-hour limit, I think. Despite the 30-mile-an-hour automatic speed sign outside the bungalow at number 36, it still has no effect. We did 2 surveys ourselves of half an hour duration, and we found that on one occasion 18 cars were set off the sign, so were exceeding 30. We couldn't tell by how much. And the next time we tried it, it was 21. Obviously, the peak times for this happening, speeding, is early in the morning and rush hour in the evening. There have been numerous accidents along this stretch of road due to speeding. We're not experts, but there are accidents, and we assume speeding does take a part in that. We have you say it's not been reported to the police, whoever's written the report say it's not reported to the police, but nowadays everybody knows the police have got enough on their plates to go running to the police every time there's an accident. But some of them have been quite nasty. Part of Howlett's Lane has an access onto St Catherine's Court, and that is a community for elderly people. Many of the houses along there are in fact bungalows. Again, that attracts elderly residents. So that people do need time to cross the road there, and we have had some terrible near misses with people ending up in the gutter because they come speeding down the road, there's a blind bend, and by the time they've seen there's someone crossing the road, that person's dived for their life into the gutter. And we have another problem we have, and I just don't understand why. We regularly get people going the wrong way up along the road. So instead of going down the side of the divided highway they should do, they go the wrong way. Don't ask me why, but it's a regular thing. Quite common, actually. Yeah. And again, if someone's speeding, it gives you less time to react. There's a car coming towards you at 40 miles an hour, and you're doing 40 miles an hour. Well, I've seen cars go up Bury Avenue. In fact, I saw one only a couple of weeks ago. The fall before, he just spanned the wheel, and if someone had been coming down Bury Avenue, that would have been, it was just so lucky no one's coming from the other direction. We have approached the police. We did our homework. We went to the police. They did send someone along on one occasion with a speed gun, and yes, they did catch people. But again, I would say, please don't tell us to go to the police. The police have got enough. They don't even go to burglaries. So what are the chances of them coming out on a regular basis to deal with this issue? It's not going to happen. We have had additional traffic, we believe, due to HS2. It's because they're on Breakspear Road and they're closing the road for this and that, and they put lights up, people are avoiding wherever they can, going down different ways. And I will admit we're not the only people that will be affected by this, but HS2 is somewhere in the equation. We're asking for traffic calming. That doesn't mean we want speed tables. It means, I'm sure there are experts in this who come along and have a look and tell us what we need to have put in to give us some assistance. As regard doing a survey, well, not so long ago, for many months, we had a wire across the road. I'm sure Councillor Cawthorne will be able to tell us. Do we have to do it again? What information was collected? No, we don't know. But if it's already been done, and surely that information could be reused if it's applicable to this. But if it's already been done, why waste £340 of public money? Yeah. I think I've picked up the points from the reports. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Mrs. Sutherland. Gentlemen, do you want to speak at this point, or one of you, or both of you, or later? You'll have to come here, I'm afraid.
Maybe district chair up there.
I'm sorry, there is an element of musical chairs for the reasons you heard earlier.
Well, it's a pleasure to be on this side of the bench, Mr. Chairman. We, the three councillors for Ruislip, very much support the petition put forward today, and we're very much aware of the problems in Howlett's Lane with regard to speed. You've heard an extremely eloquent and able petition being put forward. Residents have, as Mr. Sutherland says, put together their own evidence and spent some considerable time looking at the traffic and observing it and seeing what's going on. And it's in particular, really, in regard to that stretch of the road, which is a pretty dead straight stretch with the central reservation down it. So when people come from St Margaret's and then get into Howlett's, they can build up quite a head of speed by the time they get to the very sharp bend that drops down towards the Howlett's Lane shops. And of course, a lot of people around about school time, both at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, a lot of children down that way, families and so forth with regard to the shops. And as has already been mentioned, it's a very popular route for people walking, and the pavements aren't that wide, but nevertheless, and of course we now have the slight proliferation of mobile scooters for those who can't walk and so forth, so that is also a mobility scooters. That's also a bit of a problem because, of course, they're on the pavement and others would sometimes have to walk into the road. But the real point is that there is a genuine concern for what is a real problem. There's a number of different options, as I know only too well, with regard to these sorts of issues. And as has been said, we've seen the speed strips, survey strips, there and in other roads nearby, so there probably is quite a lot of information already. Yeah, I mean there was some in St Margaret's, I think, and there were some certainly in Howlett's a little while ago. So there's probably a goodly amount of information. Police have been mentioned. It is possible sometimes to get them to come along and do speed tests, or at least point the gun at people and see what happens. And you've heard what the result of that has been. But yeah, and of course we've got the dot matrix signs. They have proved to be very effective in terms of in other areas in terms of slowing people down. And it depends how you set them. Of course, some don't just say what the speed is, some will give a message or something, and that can be quite helpful. So we'd like you to look at a range of options in order to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Councillor Calder.
Thank you, Councillor Bianco. I shall be brief because, as you know, my colleague, Councillor Riley, until very recently held a relevant cabinet brief and knows this detail a lot more than I do, although I've been around somewhat longer. I'm very aware of the issues that have been highlighted, and as John has said, I very much support the residents in coming forward in this considered way. I mean, the sense I get is residents are not, pushing for the blanket imposition of speed tables or that sort of thing. They do want some exploration of what options there might be to address some of these issues, and we've heard about survey strips, and yes, I've seen those, as Mrs. Sutherland says. We've heard about the police with speed guns. That I wasn't aware of, but it would be good to know what's come out of that. So I suppose my message is it's a brief and simple one. Let's look at these things and see if there's something that we can come up with that will alleviate some of the issues that have been raised. So I'll keep it as simple and as brief as that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Knowles, the issue of previous surveys.
Yes, in fact, as Councillor Cawthorne alluded to, Councillor Riley was in his sort of capacity for this previously. I think the issue at the time, Councillor Riley, if you recall, was to do with lorries using Howlett's Lane, and the purpose of the surveys at that time were to establish the extent to which that was a problem. The speeds were actually looked at the time, and frankly, the 24/7 surveys over a 10-day period did not show excessive speeds. But the purpose of, obviously, that was a year ago. The purpose of the petition hearing tonight is to actually hear the present testimony from residents, and for the cabinet member to consider the next stages to take. The issue about lorries, I mean, it'd be interested to know if that is still an issue for you. If you still have lorries going down Howlett's Lane. You do? Okay, that's used.
There was one tonight. It was on none of the trees, and the trees are quite low on our side, and it was taking off branches. And I've actually asked the council to come along and get that tree trimmed back anyway.
Okay. One voice, please. All right. Well, I'm assuming that the existing flashing sign triggers at 30, or as opposed to 28 or 33.
It does. It does.
Right, okay. Yeah, the flashing sign, it was quite good, and it wasn't working for a long while, I don't know, about a year or so ago, and they were speeding up and down the road. Then it was fixed, and then they're taking no notice again. I mean, I live 2 doors down from the speeding sign, so I'm in my garden doing it, and I see the sign. So they're not taking any notice of it, to be honest. And we all speed, probably. Hands up, because I have, you know. What I do notice, whether you could change the sign, where one says about your speed, if I'm going along a road and it comes up 26 miles an hour or 31 miles an hour, then I stick within the speed limit. And it's very difficult. Probably most people here go along the road and you speed. Not intentionally, but you just drift. Yeah, that's right, we do. So whether we could change the sign and whether it would help, I don't know. I haven't got a solution. We're thinking of humps, but as you know, humps aren't always that good because they create their other problems. So I don't know. So it's a question, you know, of what you can do to do something. We need to do something, but what, I'm not quite sure, unless you give us all the stinger. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's useful information. Just a quick question. I'm assuming that the speeding is in both directions.
Yes.
Okay.
It tends to be worse, I think, on the even numbered outside because because it's actually
Okay.
wider.
All right. No, because a solution I favour, if that is the case, is which doesn't always go down well, is making the road one way against whichever direction well, yes. But okay, no, it's useful to know that it is both ways, because sometimes it's when a road is a cut through, often it is in one direction that the problem occurs. I think the answer is that maybe another survey is a bit of a waste of time. I think that maybe we should look as a first step, and because it's easy and quick, at changing the display of the automated sign to see if that makes any short-term difference or even longer-term difference. And I'd be interested to know what that sign or another sign replacing it could say that this one doesn't. And then we might look at what else one could do in the road that doesn't comprise putting speed tables in, because as this gentleman here said, I know, firstly, I'm not in favour of them. Secondly, they create problems that often new problems. The emergency services don't like them. The people who often are in favour of a hump, when they find out that they're going to put the hump right outside their house, are even less suddenly not so in favour of it, because it impacts on their ability to park, and it often also there are the noise issues. At the other end of this very same ward, your councillors will be aware that there is just such an issue over a noise issue where a raised zebra crossing has been put in place near a school for good safety reasons, and most of the petitioners, or a number of the petitioners who petitioned for it in the first place, are now petitioning to have it removed because of the noise created by lorries and the like that go over it. So humps are not a perfect solution, and they're tables, whatever you want to call them, and they're not my favourite either. So I think officers should go away and look at that. But Mrs. Sutherland, you wanted to obviously add something. I'm afraid you'll have to go over there.
I was just wondering if the experts in the room could say if there were any other things on the table, except speed tables, whether there was some sort of chicane or whether there were width restrictions. I'm not saying any of these, but if someone could come up with a plan or some options to put.
Well, those things are the sorts of things that I have in mind, and they may have different views, but chicanes and width restrictions can work. Width restrictions would obviously also solve the lorry issue, but those that are keen on Amazon deliveries wouldn't want the width restriction set too narrow, otherwise their white van won't be able to get. There are certainly other options we can look at. What
I was just going to say, Councillor, was that there's a couple of points you've said about a different sort of sign. I think you mean a different type of sign, because actually we don't sort of swap the it's not, you don't reprogram it. There are different sorts of signs, and if you look around the borough, there are different sorts. Just to comment on the fact that you said that the problem is speeding in both directions, perhaps one thing that we could explore is the possibility of a vehicle activity sign to observe both directions. I think clearly if you took one in one direction, but it serves both directions. In terms of other sorts of physical measures, things like width restrictions can be a mixed blessing because they affect the fire service and other people. Although fortunately you don't have a bus service coming down there, so you won't get the bus service complaining about it. Also, sometimes chicanes can be a mixed blessing too, because they do some things like they wipe out parking on the street where they actually exist. Some people think they look hideous, and they can also not reduce speed to the extent that people think they should do, because people look at it as a challenge. But I think the point has been made that you've asked for the council to look at possible options, which we then of course would discuss with Councillor Bianco, and then in due course your ward councillors. Okay, so I think on that basis, looking at the recommendations, we've met with one. We're not going to do two, but we are instead going to look at replacing the existing illuminated signs with perhaps a pair, one in each direction, saying something more useful, and we might talk to you about what that might be. And we will also look at what other steps we could take that might help mitigate the problem. You happy with that? Councillor Cawthorne, very briefly, because I've sort of done my bit. Yes, we'll obviously let the petitioner know as we come along, and the three ward councillors. Running suitably late now. Item 6, St Anselm's Road, Hayes Town. Is Mr. Khan here? Splendid, Mr. Khan. And all these fine people are here with you. And you've even dug the MP out. I'm most impressed.
Doug?
Doug, yes. Please be seated. You get 5 minutes. I think hopefully you got that message from watching the others. And no ward councillors here? No ward councillors here, so they don't have any rights. Please, although we have heard from, was this the one that Councillor Gardner?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we've had some representations from ward councillors and I think some other community people. So, and they're referenced in the report, and I think you might have heard something yourself potentially. Okay, Mr. Khan, please press the button and.
Yeah, thank you very much. Basically, a lot of residents couldn't come today because they have family commitments and they have children and work. So hopefully we try to be brief as possible. We've been really suffering over there all night. We've had loud music. We've had cars parked blocking the driveways, cars parked blocking the entrance. Ambulance hasn't been able to get through. Disability transport ain't been able to get through. Elderly residents are finding it very extremely difficult to go past. We've had people with disability who've been knocked down. There's been near misses, ongoing drug dealing over there throughout the night. It's really difficult for us and all the residents. We really want, our aim and objective is to, this was supposed to be a temporary measure. We want it back like it was before. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carr. Do you want to say anything at this point, Mr. Knowles?
Obviously, you don't have the benefit of any representation from your ward councillors tonight, but I believe that they have made some comments on the proposals. As I understand it, they're broadly in support of the measures that are actually in place at the moment. I appreciate that may not be the message you wish to hear, but that is what I understand. That's the representation they've made to us. Also, I think you'll find in the report there is reference to the parish priest at the church, at St Anselm's Church, and I think there's also representation from the Haystown Stakeholder Working Group, the Business Forum. So I don't know if you had a chance to read the report, sir, but it sets out some various views from other local representatives.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Sorry, could you press your button?
As Christmas is approaching, would the MP care to say anything?
Thank you. Thanks, Jonathan. The reason I'm here is because my constituents have found in this scheme at the moment a nightmare for them. I've read the report and I've seen the responses from local councillors, and I rarely disagree with them, but for many of the residents that have contacted me over quite a while now, life is hell in that corner of Hayes at the moment because of this scheme. I've read the report about parking enforcement. To be frank, that doesn't coincide with the views of local residents, and they can show you picture after picture of cars inappropriately parked, blocking their driveways, and we had another incident yesterday with an ambulance, blocking an ambulance for delivery of a disabled resident who lives near that scheme as well. So the parking issues have become a nightmare. It's now become a site for extensive drug dealing where cars are parked up and dealers are delivering, or they're using that as the site for deliveries as well. The residents have been in some dangerous situations where there's been confrontations as a result of that, where these people have actually parked even on their drives and their parking spaces as well. So for whatever the views of the Haystown Partnership and the local councillors, the people that have this lived experience are finding life extremely hard as a result of the changes in the scheme. Now, I note the recommendations in the report for no further action, but can I suggest to you that it might be a further discussion face-to-face with the residents, maybe on-site, to review what's happening at the moment, because there's clearly an issue here that needs resolving. Now, whether that's about the physical arrangements or whether that's about a combination of enforcement and the physical arrangements, something needs to happen, because we can't go on like this. And I just put this on the table. The reason I'm here is because of the representation from my constituents, of course, but also I have become worried about their safety at the moment because of what's been going on with that particular area, both physically in terms of the parking and the arrangements, the blocking of the emergency access points, and also the drug dealing that's taking place. So I just want to impress upon you the significance of the problem there is.
Thank you, I'm grateful. I suppose my question at one level would be that if we return this, your request to disable parking only, is that's the nature of the beast. Is it going to stop people who have no care for this parking there to do their dealing or whatever? And of course, there's a separate issue around because obviously drug dealing is not a council matter, it's a police matter, and whether I'm sure you've been in touch with them, but whether they're in control of the situation or completely not. So I suspect that what concerns me, I suppose, is that, well, apart from the fact that there are, I understand fully, the residents are right behind this, but equally that others have sort of said it's not such an issue. I suppose I'm concerned really at what it is that the council can actually do that can easily resolve this, because turning it from one sort of car park to another sort of car park it may help disabled people who want to park their car there, and I'm all for that. But if people are going to take no notice of it anyway, then whether it's got a disabled sign on it or a no disabled sign on it isn't going to make any difference.
I think it's a combination of things that we need to look at. One is the physical layout with regard to whether turning it back into a disabled car park, and also where the barrier is in particular. That's one issue. But actually, you're right, it does need more than just the physical arrangements. It needs an overall approach, a much more holistic approach. And actually, that is where the council comes in, working with all of us to see whether or not we can sit down with the other agencies as well to see whether the physical arrangements and some of the issues around the policing, the enforcement and the monitoring, and even some of the work on the ground with regard to tackling the drug issues related to the health issues there as well. So I think a council lead on that would be really helpful. And again, it might need a number of solutions to tackle this alongside some of the physical issues too.
Okay. John, thank you.
Thanks.
I think I'm not quite sure where this takes us, because a lot of this is outside of the remit of this petition. However, I do think, and I therefore think that whatever we might do from a parking road management perspective needs to come, as you say, as part of a bigger piece of work. And I suspect that the place that this should go is probably our antisocial behaviour team, who liaise with the police on matters such as this, and we can give it a shove, and I can give it a shove with my colleagues who look after ASB. So I think, and then if you like, we'll follow up behind with whatever might be the appropriate solution from a road parking aspect, because I think it sounds to me as though that's what we don't want is the tail wagging the dog, and it sounds like we need to start from the other end of things.
Can we just explain that to the residents who are here so we're absolutely clear?
Yeah.
Well, I'm worried they don't want to. I don't want
Okay.
them going away disillusioned. If I can just
All right.
summarise.
Well, what I think I'll say is there are a number of recommendations here, most of which I'm going to tear up. But obviously the first one is that I meet the petitioners and listen to them, and hopefully you understand that I've done that. Secondly, I think is that I note the comments made in the other recommendations, but that from what I've heard tonight, it seems that there's a wider piece of work that needs to be done, and therefore we need to consult with the antisocial behaviour teams and possibly the police to produce a bigger piece of work. And I'm not quite sure how you minute that, but I'll turn that into a recommendation. But I'll leave you to the technical bit, and that as part of the outcome, we will look at the parking / car park issues that revolve. Does that make sense and satisfy?
What I might suggest, to sort of paraphrase what you've said, is that there are clearly some concerns, wider concerns that the community have about lots of activities such as things that have been alluded to, drug dealing, many things that are very obviously of great concern. I think you've got it more or less there, Councillor, that is the first piece of work that should actually lead anything else. And it could be that when those discussions take place with antisocial behaviour people and other people involved in the community, then other things could stem from that, which could include looking at the layouts of the road.
Yeah.
It could include things like camera, CCTV, lots of things that could follow from that. But I think perhaps you've got it right that it should be the antisocial behaviour that should be the driving force, perhaps.
If I
Sorry, John. There seem to be several members of the audience who have raised a hand. I don't mind listening to a couple of them if they want to say something. I'm afraid because it's being broadcast, we have to speak into a microphone. No, John, you're almost right there, but in the final recommendation, there is an either or. Either take no action or ask officers to review. What I've asked officers to review is on a slightly wider basis that includes other officers than the transport officers and parking officers. So that's why it is. We will. One thing I will add, before, and I will let you speak in a moment. One thing I would add is that officers will keep in touch with you and keep you up to date on how we're getting along, and that may well lead to further meetings with you so that you're aware of how we're getting on and what we're doing, and listen to any comments you may have in relation to it. It's clearly a difficult problem. It's not as simple, shall we put a yellow line here or whatever it might be. This is a wider problem that involves a whole range of things on top of just simple parking. So that's where we are.
Good evening. Can I give you this, or you have it?
Yes, I'll.
It's a very narrow thing.
Yes.
And all these lorries come and park there. My husband was a councillor for the Judges. I don't know whether you know him. For the Judges. Yeah. He was a councillor with Janet Gardiner. I asked them about the car park, and may his soul rest in peace. They said to me, I went to the I asked them, why did they open the car park? And they said to me that it's only temporarily. But this is not temporary. It was only for disabled. And we cannot have any peace in that street. I thought that the council said resident first. But really, we are not happy with the council, how they treat us. Janet Gardiner sent us a message, me and my neighbor, and said that if we don't want the car park, we can move from the house. And Janet did not pay our wages, our house, nothing. She cannot tell us to move from that house because of the car park. I thought the residents are more important than the car park. So my husband is a disabled now. He's been diagnosed with cancer. My husband cannot have any peace when the ambulance came to pick him up. This morning, there was nearly accident happened. They nearly banged the ambulance. And my neighbor has a disabled. Waters close, they cannot get inside there. They cannot go out to work. Sometimes they're late because they park there. When we tell them, they abuse us. This is not your dad's property. Nighttime, we cannot sleep, playing music all night. We are just fed up with the car park. Please, if you can help us to be for only disabled. Even disabled people cannot get car park there to go to Hesse Clinic. Yeah? Even my neighbor, when they come to pick the son for school, they are late because people park in the middle of the road. They don't care. All lorries, everything come in nighttime, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock. We cannot sleep, lot of noise. So please.
Thank you. I appreciate what you've said. We'll take it on board within what we have said. So do you want to say something different or the same?
Something different.
And then we must wind it up.
Good evening. Just adding on what the residents have been saying, and in the respect of what you have been recommending that what to do. I myself, I work for the as an enforcement officer, civil enforcement officer, and also I've been working with the police. I have heard you just said something like unsocial behavior, this and that, which is good idea. But I've tried it for 8 years in Hayes, especially on the canal, and then and waters cross. I liaise with police, and we get around, on and on. But there is no solution for now. We need a big help here about this St. Asylum. Even if I am deployed in Rice Strip or Uxbridge, St. Asseram parking keeps the radio busy. St. Asseram, when I hear my colleagues at St. Asseram, I know exactly what they are facing. Not only my colleagues, even my neighbors, my residents, even for themselves. So regarding the unsocial behavior that you are saying that could be a solution to combine all these things together, it has not been working. I have tried it for 8 years. I have tried to go into the parking control. It has not helped at all. That's why we need a big help from you, if it's possible, before it's too late.
Thank you. I hear what you say, and we'll certainly take it on board. Right, you've got the recommendations? Yes. Okay. Running late, apologies, councillors. And we're now moving on to Marlon Avenue, South Ruislip. So, is this to do with Marlon Avenue? No. Sorry, I dealt with the other message.
Finish now.
Do we have a petitioner for Marlon Avenue? Sir. You need to press the button in case you haven't guessed that.
Good evening. This is my first rodeo, so apologies if I don't follow protocol in any way. So I'm the lead petitioner for the traffic calming measures I'm proposing on Marlon Avenue. Unfortunately, none of the other petitioners or residents could attend. It was a relatively short notice and a lot of young families on the road. But I wanted to make myself available. So I'm petitioning to have traffic calming measures on the road because there's a lot of speeding going on the road, particularly in the mornings and evenings during the school runs and work hours because they shoot up Marlon Avenue, sometimes at the speeds of 40 to 50 miles per hour. I've been living on the road for about 7 years now. I've had very near close calls where the cars are behind me, have no patience, and they literally swerve around me. And when I was gathering the signatures for the petitions, all the petitioners were on side. I had no one that I knocked on the door with said, no, I don't agree. And also a few of the petitioners I did speak to, they all agreed, and they've had close calls where they've had their cars or their wing mirrors clipped as well. So we're all proposing a 20 miles per hour speed limit, along with probably speed bumps, similar to what they've done on Edwards Avenue through the back, which they probably have done about 3 to 4 years ago. So it's mainly used as a shortcut, and then they come up Marlon Avenue. So the general feeling on the road, it's very unsafe. There's a lot of young families on the road with kids. I myself have 3 young kids, and when I take them to nursery or take them out to the park or shopping or something like that, I really fear for them because kids being kids, they don't, they might run onto the road, or if they're playing outside on their bikes or anything like that. So, I think if someone from the council or anyone put some surveillance on the road in any way, it's very clear and evident to see that there is a clear speeding problem, and it's an accident waiting to happen. So that's the main reason I'm here to put this petition forward.
Thank you. I will bring in the ward councillors, but I had a couple of questions to ask you. And while you're sitting there, and so as we don't have to play too much musical chairs with the microphone, I'll stay there and let me ask you a couple of questions. Is this? Clearly, a lot of the speeders are avoiding the traffic lights. That's the key element, I assume. Which makes me ask, is this a problem mainly in one direction? So in other words, is it mainly a problem of speeders coming from Station Approach, running down to cut back into West End Road by the Irish Club, as opposed to in the other direction?
Sorry, it's not through the Irish Club. So they shoot up. So opposite South Ruislip Station, we've got I've forgot the road name now. Great Central, and then turn right on Edwards. And Edwards Avenue has speed bumps and a 20 miles per hour zone. But as soon as they turn that corner onto Marlon Avenue, they feel it's a clear road, and they just literally bomb it up the road. So it is a one-way thing, not coming down to back down to Edwards, but coming up to the top of Station Approach.
So let me get this clear then. You're saying, are you, that the problem therefore runs between Edwards Avenue and Masson, as opposed to the whole length, because they're coming down Edwards and turning left into Masson, left into Marlon?
Not Masson, because Masson's on the other side, and there's a gate. I don't know what you call it. It's like an emergency gate. So at the end of Edwards, you have to bend onto Marlon Avenue. Masson's way further down.
Yeah, no, but what I was saying, I thought I understood from you, was that what you're saying is that people pop down Great Central, they turn right into Edwards, they whiz along Edwards, and when they get to Marlon, they turn left into Marlon.
Right onto Marlon.
So in that case, you're going up. I'm missing the point here somewhere. The people are trying to cut the corner between Station Approach and West End Road.
There's a barrier there.
There's a barrier here, which doesn't really show it very clearly. There's a barrier there, so you can't turn here.
So they're coming down Edwards. So they've come from Great Central.
Yeah. And then turn right onto Edwards.
Yeah.
Go all the way down to Edwards, and then it bends to the right onto Marlon, because that's the only option, because there's a barrier there.
So they then turn right onto
Marlon,
and they go to the top
and then
there.
Top of the road, turn left
onto Station Approach.
Then turn left at the lights, which goes towards the A40.
Okay, so they're doubling back on themselves.
Correct.
Essentially.
Correct.
Because I take it that Edwards doesn't. What happens at the end of Edwards? There's a barrier, is there, also onto West End Road? What happens at the end of Edwards?
You can come out here.
So why don't people just come out here?
There's a barrier.
Where's the barrier?
Here.
Oh, the barrier is across here or across here?
It's an angled barrier, isn't it?
Correct.
Oh, okay. So the only choice right, I understand this better. So the only choice they've got is to go up Marlon. Yeah. Right. Okay. So a solution might be to make Marlon one way in the opposite direction.
Possibly.
Okay. I'm just sort of thinking out loud. All right. Yeah. All right. Now, obviously, you've heard earlier that we talked about speed signs, which sometimes have a effect and sometimes don't. It might be worth considering electronic speed signs. But I think the answer, first of all, in this case, I think it is worth doing a survey. We haven't done a survey of the road, so I think I will instruct officers to do a survey, and they'll put a couple of rubber strips across the road, and it will record over a period of time what actual speed. Does it tell us direction?
It does. May I just make a suggestion, Councillor, that I've got a little plan here, which we're pretty colour plan with lots of red dots over it, which represents the location of the street lights. If you're minded to, you could invite, obviously, Ward Councillor and the petitioner to suggest where you think a survey would be most useful. I mean, then we've got your input, if you like, and actually.
No problem at all. Councillor Tuckwell, I apologise. It got a bit carried away. Would you care to speak now? I'm afraid you'll have to sit next to your petitioner.
Thank you. Okay, yeah. First and foremost, I'd just like to thank Deepak for, not an easy thing knocking on doors, talking to relative strangers, but certainly what he's done there is he's galvanised the Marlon Avenue community, who I've also spoken to and know the area very well. strength of feeling is quite high, because as we've now got to, people get very frustrated when they're sitting on station approach and see an opportunity to sort of go in a horseshoe configuration to try and beat the traffic. And quite often, as I sit in that traffic most mornings myself, you see people trying to do that and they still end up behind you, because station approach actually does move quite well. So it's a bit of a false issue there, but nonetheless, people still do try to beat the traffic there. And also, some of the satellite navigation systems, some of the older ones, don't recognise that barrier, so they see a cut through straight onto West End Road and they get the barrier and think, oh, okay, there's only one way out now. And then, of course, they're late for wherever they've got to be and try to accelerate. I've also been spoken to by the South Ruislip Residents Association, who are very concerned about this road. And again, this was recognised, as has been said, about 3 years ago, because the council did put traffic calming measures into Edwards Avenues for the very same reason, and they were very welcomed by the residents in there. So I fully support what's been said today. Marlon Avenue is extensively residential. It's very narrow. It has extensive parking on either side, so of course that does add to the safety risk. And as has been said, we do have young families residing there. There's also a school nearby, Borough Primary, and you've got a lot of pedestrian traffic, walking from various parts of the local community to get through to Borough Primary. So it kind of makes sense to find out how the traffic is performing, as has been said, and I think once we know that, then we can come up with a range of options to find a solution which is the right thing. So I think that's about it for me, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. One concern I do have, of course, is that we don't end up simply moving the problem. I mentioned this earlier, I don't know if you were in here at the time, but clearly looking at the plan, there's Hardy Avenue and Northolt Avenue, just to name but two, that are parallel. And what I don't want to find is we come up with a solution that cures the Marlon Avenue problem and simply creates a Hardy Avenue problem. So I do have some concerns around that. But clearly, I think the first step is the traffic survey. See what it shows us. Take steps from there. I'm not a fan of speed humps. And I'm afraid I'm not a fan of 20-mile-an-hour zones, other than outside schools. But there are other things we can look at. So that doesn't mean that we can't do anything. It simply means that I'm not keen on them. But I think the first step is the survey. Let's do the survey. By all means, come and give your opinion too, Mr. Knowles, as to where you think. I mean, it might not matter, but where you think it might be helpful to have those survey strips, and we'll take it from there. One question I did have actually is this a problem in the mornings, as opposed to because I'm guessing that most people are trying to aim for the. No, you can't do it at the moment because I've got my finger on the button. In the mornings, I can see that everybody's racing to get to the A40. In the evenings, it's quite the reverse. So is this a problem in the mornings only, or not?
So it's predominantly in the morning, as you say, because of trying to beat the traffic. But I've been working from home in COVID times for the past 3 years, and I've noticed that even more so now. And yes, it is more towards in the mornings, but it doesn't rule out the afternoons, the evenings, or the nights, because you would hear these cars doing 40 to 50 miles per hour in sports cars, but generally you would probably find that the large portion of speeding is in the mornings, yes. But I wouldn't rule out any other time of day, because it's still an opportunity to cut around with this traffic.
Okay, thank you. Well, look, we'll start with the speed survey. We'll keep in touch with you. Please come up afterwards and decide where you think it's going to be.
Just as a point, I mean, officers, not one to sort of tell officers who are very experienced in highways matters, but one point that you raised, Councillor Bianco, was around moving the problem, and maybe a no left turn into Great Central Avenue for 2 hours in the morning might be an option.
Well, I think that, as I said earlier, I think there are different options rather than just that. And your suggestion is certainly something we've used elsewhere and is quite successful and may well work. And it would also help the other roads at the same time, because I am very keen that in 3 months' time we've sorted your problem, and I then get a petition from Hardy Road, and Councillor Tutwell will be sitting there again telling me that we've got to do something about it. So are we clear? So recommendations 1 and 2 I think can stand. Okay, is that agreed? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and Councillor, always a pleasure to see you.
Good evening, sir.
Apologies for the late hour. Last time we had lots of time between petitions and we were twiddling our thumbs, so I shortened down the speed, and of course this time it's gone the other way. Mr. Bath, you are Mr. Bath. I must ask you to go over there. This session is being broadcast on our YouTube channel, so if there's anyone present who doesn't want to be seen, then please, yes, sit back. Where's he behind? Well, the officers can tell you in the next room. But as a result, we need to use microphones when we're being taught. It isn't, but if you press the red button,
there we go. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So I've been nominated, mandated, delegated to appear here today to really talk about the issue of speeding on Hersey's Road. As you know, Hersey's Road is a long road that stretches from, starts at Honeycroft Hill, comes down the hill, and then there's a long straight section of road that leads to the A40. Residents on the road and myself have witnessed a number of accidents in recent months, and indeed some of us here tonight have been involved and victims of accidents due to speeding on the road. It's a consistent and persistent problem. The paper that was sent in, I think, April referenced 3 accidents that happened on the 3rd of March, 22nd of March and 13th of April this year, and these were the ones that were witnessed by myself and my friend. And so we took photos, we spoke to the police, and clearly there is a pattern here of accidents consistently, and there was a follow-up email in August which referenced another accident of a Mini crashing into a BT pole just by Sweetcroft Road. So we collected signatures, and thanks to the fellow residents who helped collect those signatures, to petition that some action is taken before someone is injured or killed. As you know, it's a residential road. It leads to the walkway that goes along the river Pin. There's a nursery, and obviously many dog walkers, bus stops where people sit at and who are potentially at risk from the actions of drivers who speed, potentially because it's a straight road, and at night time, drivers can do 70 miles an hour plus down Hersey's Road, and it's very noisy and dangerous, and also as a thoroughfare en route to the A40. It's a shortcut, a bit of a rat run, and people do tend to speed down there. So I think as a group, I think we've requested that speed bumps are put on the road, but I think, read the form and the manner of the intervention, I think, is best left to the experts. Something needs to be done more than the current. There is some chicane parking on the road at the moment, where you have some parking spaces opposite one another. However, as you can see from the accident of the 13th of April, you see a scooter ploughed into one of the cars on the chicane, because often people go head to head and they don't slow down. So we think it's not something that we are making up. We think it's a real danger, and we felt it was our duty to come here tonight to really request that something is done for the sake of residents and fellow road users.
Thank you. I will. What will I say? I know the road well. I have used it many times as a cut through, but of course I've only ever driven at 30 miles an hour. Councillor, are you here to represent them?
I would like a clarification.
Would you care to sit next to the petitioner, as unfortunately you have to be heard by all and sundry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like a clarification as to how this will affect my residents in Uxbridge, because I don't think the proposed speed ramps fall within Uxbridge. However, if they were my residents, I would definitely support their proposals.
Sorry, just can I be clear? Which ward is this?
We took advice from our colleagues. I believe it's possibly 3 wards that are affected by this. That was the Uxbridge, Hillingdon East and Hillingdon West. That's what we were told.
So it is partly in your ward?
No, not at all.
Well, in that case, I'm afraid you aren't entitled to speak.
Thank you, sir.
Councillor, can you remind me which ward you represent?
Uxbridge.
Come on. Uxbridge, sir.
In that case, part of this road is within your ward. You may speak. Sorry, what is the clarification you're seeking? If we do something here, it won't work because I'm holding my hand on this. If we do something here, it may impact other roads.
No, the only thing which I'm saying is that I've studied the routes, the maps, to ensure that this has an impact on my ward, and it doesn't. So, and I have come here to seek clarification how my ward gets affected. I also have seen the proposal, read them, and say, should this affect my road in the way which is being put forward, I would support the petitioners on their quest to get what they want.
Can I come in? Just confirm, there is part of Honeycroft Hill in Uxbridge. That's why we have Uxbridge included here. So the petition relates to Honeycroft Hill and Hersey's Road. Part of Honeycroft Hill is in the Uxbridge ward.
Thank you, sir. However, the proposal is for Hersey's Road to have a speed humps rather than Honeycroft Hill.
No, the request is to have speed humps in Hersey's Road and Honeycroft, but Mr. Barth has, I will step in before he says it, has actually said, let's leave it to the experts to come up with a proposal, which may be speed humps or could be something completely different. Thank you, Councillor. You can't speak because I've got my finger on the button. I have control, but thank you, Councillor. I've got the message. We've got the message. Only if you're brief.
If it is in my ward, I will support the petitioners.
Delighted to hear it. Good. Right. Obviously, I know the road. It is a long road. It is a cut through. It is a busy thoroughfare. One of my concerns always, as well, you will always hear at a petition evening, is that We don't solve a problem in one road only to create a problem in another. I'm not saying that's what would happen, but it's always one of my concerns. I have to tell you I'm not a fan of raised tables or humps, but we will come to that later in terms of possible solutions. This is a bus route, I think I'm right in saying, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So I don't know what aspect that might impact. It may have an impact. And one of the biggest problems with the installation of things like humps or tables is that people think it's a wonderful idea until they find out that the hump or table in question is going to be right outside their house, and then they suddenly decide it's not such a brilliant idea after all. And we have a situation ongoing at the moment elsewhere in the borough where we recently installed a raised zebra crossing. The zebra crossing was there already, but we've put it on a table now at the request and for safety reasons and subject to a petition. And now that it's been installed, we've just received a petition asking us to take it out because of the noise from the lorries as they go over it and so on and so forth. I mean, we're not going to take it out, but it does demonstrate some of the issues, and it's one of the reasons I'm not very happy about speed humps. Also, of course, there is the issue of emergency vehicles and the impact speed humps and tables and such like have on their progress around the place. But there are other solutions that we can look at. I think the first step is we haven't done a survey in this road, have we?
No, I think not for quite some time, and I think it would be very instructive, I think, to actually have some speed survey data there to back up the testimony that's come from the petitioners. And I think also one thing that's just worth saying is that obviously the police are the primary focus for any enforcement of speeding because it's an endorsable offence. So, you know, you get points on your licence, the council can't give you that. If we get some useful data from it, I think one of the first things we would certainly do is raise this with our colleagues in the police to make sure that... I know that in the past there has been enforcement action in Hearses Road. In fact, a former colleague of mine actually was stopped for speeding and was given a ticket. So I think the survey could be a very useful first step, and particularly as it embraces 3 wards, I think there'll be a lot of interest from the various councillors.
And there's rather a nice colour photo here on my desk, which we would be happy for you to view and advise where you think would be good places to put these speed. Because we put a couple of rubber strips across the road, and it dictates we can tell the direction and the speed of the vehicles. So, yeah, if you care to consult and decide, I mean, we're quite happy to listen to your views, advice in terms of where you think we would best get the best result. So I'm always happy to help.
Shall we? Should we just take a minute? I mean, I think if I could start it off, I think it'd be helpful, given that we're here. I
mean, you can decide after the end of this meeting. It doesn't have to be. I mean, you can do it immediately after the end of this meeting, or you can do it next week. It doesn't really matter. But we're happy to help. Before I close this off, is there anyone else who would like to speak, who hasn't spoken and has something extra to add, rather than to repeat what has already been said? If so, I'd be more than happy to hear them. Or are you all in agreement with your leader? Sorry, Mr. Barth. Good. Okay, so the first recommendation is to meet the petitioners and listen to their request. I've done that. And secondly, based on that, I think the first step is to undertake a survey. Roughly how long does this take, Mr. Knowles?
Should be speaking on this. One thing, we don't do it in school holiday time. We do it at the busy times, so we make sure that we do it then. I appreciate that roads like yours, there'll be a fair amount of school-related traffic, I'm sure, at peak times. So it would be sometime before Christmas. I think that's the best answer I can give.
Okay, so thanks. So that would mean that probably early in the new year we would have a view from what that has produced, and we could then look at what we might do to mitigate it. And we'll certainly, I think we should certainly take things up with the police because they are the speed, the speed kings, and they have a gun and they can find people. I'd love to be in that position, but unfortunately, as a council, we aren't. Although we'd probably alienate all our residents incredibly quickly. Say again? Yes. What has worked quite successfully in other places, sometimes better than others, are vehicle-activated signs. These rather colourful little things that say you're going too fast, or with a smiley face. But I think there is one actually. There is one already. Well, we could certainly look at that and/or move it. Whether it has any impact, it's difficult to tell. I mean, I think the answer is it probably helps some people, but probably what it does is the person that's travelling along at 33 miles an hour goes, "Oh, I'll slow to 30," whereas the person travelling at 50 miles an hour thinks, so you know, what do I care? So I accept that these have limitations. Anyway, let's take this step by step. I think that's the first thing to do. And then we can look at what we might do. One question I was going to ask is do you perceive that this is a problem that happens in both directions, or is it more one way than the other?
I think our instinct is both.
Okay, because one of my pet solutions is to make a road one way, but that can work if the problem is in one direction. Then you just make it one way in the other direction, and that solves the problem. I mean, people don't like it, but it works. Fine. Let's sit back and wait for the results. We can have a much better discussion after that, and we will keep you, Mr. Bath, informed so that you can then keep your fellow residents likewise. Is that you got what you need? Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, go on.
Nick.
Hello. Okay, it was just going back to the one point that was made earlier about getting police records of the accidents that have happened on Hersey's Road. I just wanted to say that a lot of the time, and a lot of the residents have experienced this when they've had accidents, the police actually don't even show up. So a lot of accidents have happened, but they haven't been recorded. Just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. But the police will turn up if there's ambulances and fire brigade and whatever, but not if you've just clunked somebody else's car. I accept that, and I think the issue is twofold. Let's do the survey. Let's hassle the police to turn out more often with their speed gun, because nobody likes to be fined, and let's look at what solutions may be available to help. I promise nothing, but please understand. But let's look at what solutions may be available to us to take on.